Thank you all for coming. I'm so excited about doing this. I'm Mary Eggers, and besides being out of breath, I have known Lois since 1980. And the first time I came here was 20 years ago. And when I woke up after jet lag, she handed me a map of the city with an X on her house and said, "Go have an adventure." And I believe that that's the way Lois has lived her life, having adventures. And I also believe it's what's kept her young. And so she is a very dear friend. And now I'm going to read, the other thing. At the end, Frank, would you stand or raise your hand? He is selling books. If you're interested, you can get them on Amazon. And if you want a signed copy, Lois will send it to you. If you live in San Miguel, all the books for San Miguel will go to Frank's house, and you'll pick them up there. They're $20 a copy. 15. Okay, what do I know? And if you live in the States, they'll be sent to you in the States signed, but they are on Amazon. So now I'm going to read about Lois. About Lois. I'm not going to ad-lib this. Lois is a retired teacher and painter turned poet. She lives in Connecticut and winters in San Miguel, where she's active in the San Miguel Play Readers for a very long time and very good at it, and in the Poetry Cafe. And is that the same as the Poetry Share? Anyway, she has published 3 chapbooks and 5 collections of her poetry. Her poems have appeared in the Connecticut River Review, in online journals, A Little Poetry, Bolts of Silk, Calvary Cross, Elm Dash, and Epiphany. She has also received awards from the Sonnet Contest and the Altrusa Contest for senior poets in Connecticut. Well into the last phase of a very full, active life, rich with family and extensive travel, she now finds poetry helps to guide her. Let's welcome Lois Read.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. As Mary said, I am a winter bird, and this is my 31st winter in San Miguel. Last year, of course, I didn't come, and it was pretty awful. For the first time, I spent the winter where I now live in Connecticut at a senior community where they were very careful and took wonderful care of us. But it was a difficult time. So some of the poems in my book rise from that time. Some are remembrances of travel and other things. When I'm there, I go out every day and take a walk. When I'm here, I walk to get someplace. So it's a different kind of life entirely. But I have to tell you about the drawing on the cover of my book, which my granddaughter who lives in Arizona sent me this drawing for Christmas in 2020 during the lockdown. And it cheered me up so much. My great-grandson, who was then 9, did the drawing. And I knew then that I had to make a book and put the drawing on the cover. So, the first poem in the book was written in October on one of my walks around the pond there at Ashley Village before the election, before COVID. But it's kind of prophetic. It's called Treasure Chest. And the goldenrod was gorgeous. I wrote, "The swale is brimming gold today, golden rods to be stored away in memory chests, to be kept at bay for darker times, when I'll be King Midas, take them out and feed on private riches." More treasure. This morning, bright after last night's rain, diamonds are winking on my window screen. the only kind of jewels I treasure. Most are white, but one or two twinkle blue. I don't question this, worry about carats, lasting worth. Just revel in this evanescent treasure chest, value it more than any gems from Tiffany. Well, now every morning on my email I get a poem from Rattle, which is a company that puts out a poetry magazine. And if anyone here taken a workshop from Judith Hill, raise your hand. Oh, lots. Well, the first thing that happens in Judith's workshop is you make a poetry cupboard. And she shouts out questions like name 5 rivers, 3 mountains, a color, all kinds of unrelated things, and you write words as fast as you can write. And you have a couple of pages of words. And during the workshop, you use those words. So, on reading the morning poem from Rattle, I don't want to write about ugliness, catastrophe, despair. The morning news takes care of keeping us up to date on typhoons in the Philippines, fires in Australia and Chile, the latest scandal, a misbehavior by a notable, a British royal, someone who certainly should know better, behave better. I don't want to write about all that. Someone else can be the social conscience. I am hanging on by my fingernails here in the age of Trump, trying to focus on beauty, beauty all around me, beautiful behavior, beautiful moments, to be savored quickly before they are snatched away like the special cheese Lola bought for Christmas Eve, which her little dog Sammy stole off the kitchen counter while she was opening the door for us. That's for Lola. Well, now I'm back to the poetry cupboard. I was trying to write about this weird time without referring directly to the things that were happening. So I used the poetry cupboard to do that, and you can decide if I did it effectively or not. It's called The Effects of Global Warming on the Poetry Cupboard. Jack be nimble, Jack be quick, somebody stole your candlestick. Cassiopeia blazes in a drought-dry sky. Bluebells sound a warning cry, send honeybees buzzing out of lavender fields which have lost their scent. People in France begin to speak Swahili. Maple trees drop acorns. An old man's hand clutches a white rose, offers it to Rapunzel if she will let down her hair this Monday evening, which is full of linnet wings that flutter as chimpanzees play hopscotch, kick the can in fields of phlox. Rodin swings a mallet at a donkey piñata hanging in an oak tree, balancing a glass of Cabernet in his other hand. Tom Thumb announces in a voice so small that nobody hears, global warming has reached the point of no return. Random rules, nursery rhymes no longer rhyme. Well, in the middle of all this was the lockdown, and I was confined to my lovely little cottage. And this poem is called Cottage 51. My home for 15 years is both a haven and a prison, the reality of now. I cannot share it, cannot leave it, save to take a solitary walk, feel shackled to a rock in the desert of my own company, unable to access stimuli outside the radius of my reach. I feel motivation centipede away, inch by inch, intent too, leaves me stripped in jail without the trappings of my life. A memory slips in of walking in a desert in Egypt, surprised to find not only sand, but rocks, big rocks. I feel the sting of wind-blown sand, watch people wrap themselves in shawls, go on living, boarding buses, weeding gardens, faint call to carry on. Wow. Which reminded me of this, storytelling. A sucker for stories, I bought saffron in Egypt. Saffron, the most expensive spice in the world because of the story. The boy touched Carolyn's heart, touched her sleeve, then touched Carolyn's heart. He was 10, maybe 12, bare feet as dusty as the jalabia he wore, 2 sizes too big for him, large black eyes, both wise and innocent. You come, my mother, she give you tea. He knew his pitch in several languages. We followed to a dark little room, the doorway curtained from Luxor bright. We're seated on 2 surprisingly formal needlepoint chairs, presented with glass mugs of steaming tea by his mother, who whispered in and out without saying a word. My mother and my sisters, he began, go every day to collect spindly straws from crocus, 6 at a time, to put into baskets. When full, they bring them back here for drying. Look, I show you. Trays of strands stacked on shelves in the corner, plastic bags of them for sale. I don't remember how many Egyptian pounds we paid, or dollars. Don't know if Carolyn ever cooked with hers. I certainly never cooked with mine. My cuisine more pedestrian. Yet each time I saw the little bag on my spice rack, I was back again in Luxor, falling into the pool of those large black eyes. Well, quarantine to quarters. I want to write in the middle of things, out where the action is, or used to be, not alone here, forbidden to approach another, to see them face to face. On my walk outside, I come across a cluster of neighbors, masked, of course, properly socially distant, looking for all the world like the Dolphin Gang, planning to hold up a stage. I congratulate myself for following orders, playing it safe for myself and others. Yet today it is raining, not fit for a walk. I am confined to quarters. Well, a Scrabble player, Lola. Idly, I look up Q words. There are more than I thought. Quadrant, quadratic, that's something in math, I think. Quadrille, an 18th century dance. Quartz, quash, quiz, quintessential, the essence of a thing. I stop, wonder, what could it be, the essence of this crisis, this out-of-control situation that has turned life as we know it completely upside down? I feel like Plato's people in the cave, looking at shadows behind masks, unable to see. I go back to quartz, a rock I can hold in my hand. So, well, I kept taking walks, and this is one of the last walks of the fall. It's called Last Dance. This is a perfect morning. a perfect time to take time out on the bench beside the pond, under the queen of trees, or the Picasso tree, as a friend dubbed it. Why, I'm not sure, unless the violent striations of the bark evoke the way Picasso chose to paint the women in his life, contrary to images of love one thinks of as the norm. This morning is perfect, a peaceful time after so much unrest. Brown leaves drift to their final rest, each one differently. This one spiraling, another landing in the pond, floating with the ducks for just a little while, reminding me of rhythms that persevere even in the midst of chaos, that threatens all we cherish as it twists and throttles truth. Steady rhythms that allow for aberrations, embrace uniqueness, individual leaves drifting, dancing to the ground one by one in a personal farewell, as well as unusual visions, like Picasso's last portrait of his wife. Well, sometimes walking, I mean, you think of all kinds of things. And this one is called Champion. The cadence of walking cradles the mind, frees it to dream, to imagine the white line you follow as a solid wood beam. In a gym, flanked by stands, you are part of a team. You sense Walter Mitty looming behind you. His voice tickles your ear. Go ahead, think it. It's yours if you think it. Think of yourself in a gold lame leotard, cut to showcase your gluteus, maximum and minimum. Trophies of training. Think triple back handspring, double somersault dismount. Think Olympic gold. Think of outscoring the best. Simone Biles, Riley McCusker. You shed shoes, shed years. Are a nubile preteen, hair neat in a ballerina bun, completely serene, on 4 inches of beam. You flip, prance, dance, triumph the dismount, feast on cheers that go on and on and on. Well, another birthday. I think I was here for this one. I never know what to say when people tell me they can't believe I'm 95. It feels like they think I'm running some kind of con and trying to put something over on them. I would love to show them the selfie I took on my phone. Say, this is what 95 looks like, but I deleted it. No one 95 should take a selfie. Now, I realize it is supposed to be a compliment, but I never know how to respond. I mean, should I say thank you that I have lived this long, that I have exceeded the life expectancy in the United States by 13.31 years? Only 11.70 if I lived in Canada, but it doesn't feel right to thank people for that. Now, I can do the math. There's limited time left in my lifespan, and I am thankful for every day that I am allowed to greet miraculous and new, even when the hours pass much the same as the day before, reading, walking, playing word games. So I just smile, mumble, it's only a number, go on as usual with a hot shower in the morning to steam away increasing creaks. That one's for you, Bill. Now on to other things. Cold peas. Armenia is on the news tonight. The commentator chatting about conflict between neighboring countries. I tune her out, drift instead to an evening long ago, pushing peas around at the dinner table, being told firmly to clean your plate, then remember the starving Armenians. I didn't question the logic of this. Certain truths just are when you are small, like Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy, the starving Armenians. Now, other kids I knew had the starving people in China, maybe Ethiopia. Had no more clue where these places were or why cleaning our plates would keep people there from starving. Now, I see on a map on TV that Armenia actually exists, tucked into the mountains between Russia on the north and one of those Stan countries on the east. Armenian men are in the news too. They're shooting rockets at their neighbors. They didn't starve to death after all. Even though I slipped my cold peas to our dog Thunder under the table. Well, being in lockdown gave me time to think about and remember with joy a lot of the wonderful times I've had living in other places, particularly in Provence in the south of France, where I was a student in an art school, taught there the next year, and then went back 10 years later on sabbatical, and some trips as well. This one is called Lavender Field. Perhaps I was in heaven when painting in Provence, an interlude just past the middle of my life. So vivid still, it must be for me a spiritual event. It was for sure a sensory happening, to sit cross-legged on the ground, canvas propped between my knees, while all around bees buzzed a symphony that drowned out thought, drunk on the scent of lavender. Or perhaps the hot Provençal sun dizzied me into other realms, far from breakfast, ordinary rhythms. Some meditate to reach this state. I paint. At least I did then. The painting sold to someone in Chicago. The happening is mine, locked in the album of my heart, treasured there with other signs from God. Well, we're going to go back to Egypt for a minute. This is called Tourist. It is pretty hard not to be impressed with the pyramids at Giza, with the great Sphinx sitting there in the hot sand, wearing that enigmatic expression. Yet the thing I remember best about that visit to Egypt is the tomb of Mercy Ankh, I think that was her name, old kingdom princess, who had a sculptural portrait made every 10 years, all now in a row on a shelf in her tomb at Giza. Visiting over 3,000 years later, I saw right into her life, how she grew, got a little fat, changed her hairstyle, her expression. By the time I got to the last one at the end of the row, I swear I heard the tinkle of cymbals at her funerary rites, felt sad that she was gone. Well, then there was a marvelous trip to Chile. And we went on a boat south of the continent. This is called Visiting the Serrano Glacier. Scotch over glacier ice, a special treat offered after a hike over newly green tundra, virgin growth rising following the retreat of ice. Massive Patagonia marble, which shimmers in the southern sun as it inches, too slowly for us to notice, toward extinction. To be there is being in church, better than church, actually, this being for a moment one with the long, slow evolution of everything that is, that ever was, or ever shall be. Visiting the penguin's nest, second best, but surely part of everlasting awe, a feeling to your very core, the miracle and majesty of ongoing life, of change, of how you are a part, a small part, just as penguins and glaciers are a part, of an intrinsically beautiful plan unfolding even as you sip your scotch. This is a trip I remember fondly. It's called The Kindness of Strangers. Memories slip through the colander of years, tiny unrelated bits, each one a key, unlocking a piece of the past. It is 5 a.m., November 1979. I am standing, freezing, in front of a coffee machine on a deserted train platform somewhere in Austria. Find my francs won't fit into the slot. A perfect stranger from the train with the right kind of coin extracts a cup, hands it to me, nods, walks off. As I gratefully sip, the rest of the trip flows back in the steam. Bits coalesce. How Annie and I met in Lacoste in the summer when she was there with a group studying French, and I was there teaching in the art school. How she casually said one day, over wine at the Café de France, "Come visit me in Munich when the school has a break." How I took the bus to Marseille with no plans in my backpack, with only a few words of French, absolutely no German. How I took a night train to Munich, sketched the mountains through the windows as the morning broke, hoped Annie would be at the station to meet me. How her flatmate Willie, a lawyer, moved out for the week so I could have his room, bookshelves up to the very high ceiling. Now, I remember more now about the flat, its gracious age, the tall tiled heater in the corner of the parlor, the bathtub on legs in the kitchen. How Annie's young professional friends adopted me as a favorite aunt, marked my map so I wouldn't get lost during days of solitary sightseeing. Now, I forgot the museums I went to alone. Remember instead boisterous evenings with the group, a puppet show, a one-ring circus, freezing under a tent in November. How everyone dropped by afternoons at the Café Stopsel for coffee and strudel, for board games and after-work gossip, to go as a group to see Apocalypse Now. I remember drinking mulled cider on a trip in the community VW Bug to Mad King Ludwig's hunting lodge, seeing skydivers floating by like big birds. How the group swooped to the station to see me off on Sunday. How they grinned as I waved through the window. How the little Dachshund barked goodbye. Well, back home, I watched a lot of TV, watching nature on PBS. The wolf cub, not a real wolf cub, but a camera made to look like a wolf cub, was placed near the den in the Canadian tundra by clever scientists wanting to study wolf family behavior. Just as the almost real mongoose was set near a warthog's home to record the grooming process, partnership of the mongoose with the warthog. A strange partnership indeed. The mongoose apparently happy doing all the work. Partnership, a relationship in which one member benefits the other. It is hard to imagine delousing a most unattractive warthog was a joy to the mongoose, yet biologists assure us nature has its reasons, that nothing frivolous survives, except perhaps young chimpanzees at play, splashing in their community pool in the heart of Africa, mugging at their reflections, observed and recorded by an almost real baby chimp. Well, okay. This little poem is called Goodbye to Red. The color red has left my life. My house in Mexico, with its cheerful red facade, red coffee maker, red TV and cushions, gone. Red clothes now feel off, like costumes on loan for the day from someone else. Deep red, maroon, still feels like me, but I do miss the exclamation mark of red, startling my day, my thoughts, even sometimes my dream. No, softer shades, soothe and gentle me, are easier to wear. So another style poem. Style. Mannequins in windows of stores like of Fifth Avenue, like Bergdorf's, Bloomingdale's, sport style, rarely seen on the street, promise gateways to pleasure, tease of power that flies in on hawk's wings, sending the timid to flee to the safety of childhood, sparrows not willing to dare to emulate fiberglass trendsetters, whose headless cousins command in like manner on a Mexican sidewalk, in front of a no-name boutique on Calle Refugio. Fashion raptors striding out 6 strong in tights with varying tops, forcing walkers to take to the cobblestone street to view which feathers to choose. Yeah, this poem is for Mary. She told me this story and I had to write a poem. She has also written about it. It's called Mary Buys a Burqa. I often wonder if my inner life, the part of me that seeks the mystery, would be different if I were born, grew up in a totally different place. Saudi Arabia, for instance, where my friend Mary went last summer on a business trip. Eager to embrace the new, immerse herself in each milieu, Mary bought a burqa, put it on, walked around, only her eyes visible. I felt trapped, she said, in a hot black shroud, frantic to be seen, to be heard, quickly sought safety with my male colleague. Now, if my lot had been to be born and live where custom proscribes what women may or may not do, would I be docile? Never dream life might be other, except the system that relegates my mother, sisters, me, to servitude, obedience, the home, our only world? Or put purple polish on my toenails, write poems in secret, which I would hide where no one else could find them? Would my inner self be trapped or free if I should wear a burqa? Well, trekking. If math was the same in biblical times as it is today, Moses was 80 when he led the Israelites out of bondage in Egypt. I was still traveling when I was 80, chose to forego a walking trip around the coast of Cornwall. I did go to Machu Picchu. I took the train instead of trekking up to Cusco. Certainly, I did not wander on foot through deserts in charge of a host of discontents, beset by problem after problem about the food, not manna again, lack of comfort. At least in Egypt, we had a bed and a roof. I didn't walk for 40 years in threadbare sandals until I was 120. Finally see the promised land on the other side of the mountain, only to be told to hand over the leadership stick because I was to stay there and die. Some say this was harsh, that Moses should have been allowed to walk on into Canaan. I say, what a relief it must have been to know he had done it, had succeeded at last, fulfilled the charge he had been given, could finally rest. Well, in France, I, of course, visited Giverny, Monet's wonderful garden. And my visit years later led me to write this poem, a kind of a fantasy. It's called Monet's Apprentice. Maestro, let me carry that easel. It is too heavy for a man of your years. I'll set it right up here on the Japanese footbridge where you were painting yesterday. Watch as you once again ferret out light from the lily pads. You don't talk as you paint. I have to imagine what you are thinking, what you say to your brush as it breaks open form, spilling it onto the canvas as jewels of light. A critic once said of you, Monet is only an eye, but what an eye. Another chastised you for painting Camille on her deathbed. You are visual kin to a conductor who hears every note, every nuance of sound. A painter I know told me, painting is Zen. You are in it and you are out of it. When you painted Camille, you were grieving observer and husband. Now I have heard you don't believe in God. Proclaim yourself an atheist. I watched at Rouen as you pummeled the cathedral, stonemason's triumph, rebuilt it as rainbows, impressions of color, a chorus from God. Color, light, the light of the world, you, its disciple. You found your own way here in this garden, you so carefully fashioned, in haystacks, the river, in series that shows how everything changes. Now I see now the sun shifts. I will bring you the 10 o'clock canvas. No need for you to stop painting. I was talking about pottery to someone. Who was I talking about pottery? This poem is called Monks and Mendicants. The first assignment in pottery class, a pinch pot. The teacher called it a begging bowl. I don't approve of begging. Didn't then, don't now. But I stuck my thumb into the moist gray ball, began to squeeze, my fingers on the outside pressing against, forcing the clay to rise. As it did so, the teacher began to tell of monks and mendicants who went out into the world, their only possession, a clay bowl. how each encounter was simple, person to person, face to face, without the complication of competition, of stuff between them. As I listened, the clay began to thin, to smooth, to rise into a sort of wall. The teacher cautioned, "It is not easy to make a pinch pot. You must avoid a clumsy, heavy base. Make sure the rim is right. Make sure your begging bowl is a proper vehicle for sharing." It helps to listen to a story while you work the clay, to let your fingers learn it, so fragile yet so strong, so responsive to your every touch. I stretch it out to match the tale as her words drop into my bowl. Well, this one is a love affair to chocolate. It's called Chocolate. Velvet fruit, exquisite square. I hold you up to sniff, between fingers, thumb, numb with your rich attentions. If I don't eat you quickly, you will melt into my palm. If I let you, you would liquefy all over me. Knotted smoke, dark punch of earth and night leaf. For a taste of you, anyone would gladly crumble to ruin. Enough chatter. I'm ready to fall in love. So, poets like to fool around with forms sometimes, and there is a form called an abecedonarian poem, which is a poem in which each line starts with the next letter of the alphabet. I'm going to need another drink for this. So if you're reading it, you can see that each beginning of each line is capitalized, so it's obvious that it's the alphabet. But I'm going to try to read it so you can hear that. It's called Cross-Pollination. Apples, artichokes, aardvarks, all begin with A. Other than that, they have nothing in common, normally never appear in the same dissertation at all. Why then might we entertain the idea of forming a bond between these three, a glue, which will gloss over, even hide the fact of disparity, increase the possibility that they are kin somehow? Although we love to find links, connections, bonds, manipulating marriages between these three in no way suggests we are onto some genetic abnormality, possibly even a quixotic cousinship that removes barriers, encourages synchronicity, even tolerates apples and aardvarks merging until they are no longer themselves, but unique varieties. Some new species feel wound, bound, a botanical xenia, yin and yang fused, joined on the stripes of a zebra. No, it's fun. Those are fun things. And the last poem that I'm going to read, because Sally wanted time for questions, is a little poem called Gratitude, My Daily Bread. The apples in my oatmeal, the nuts for added crunch, raisins too for sweetness. I relish every bite, for I have been gifted with another day of life to sip and sniff the coffee, walk hatless in the rain, and when it stops, salute the sun, say namaste again. With gratitude, I love it all. The simple meals I eat alone, the apple pie, the carrot cake, the quiet of the afternoon which gathers into evening, folds finally into night. I whisper to my pillow as I turn out the light, Merci, mon Dieu, and gracias. Danke, toda, tak. Thank you. You wanted questions, Sally, so time for questions.
Suggested that you do that for the audience, because I've sat by your side for the day you started and found Judith and watched you, and you are a miracle, Lois.
I can't quite hear you.
Yeah.
Anyone have questions? Yes.
You are so prolific. How do you organize your writing time? How do you produce so much? How are you so prolific? You are prolific.
Well, since I stopped painting, this has become my way of responding to the world. But during the awful time of lockdown, I really didn't write much. I sort of got these poems together and thought about making the book. And it wasn't, I mean, I knew I needed a shot of Judith. So when, in February, I took her workshop, and now I'm writing again.
Excellent.
Also, I go to the poetry share on Sundays, and that, you know, we have to bring something, right?
May I make a comment about that?
Yes. You want to do it in the mic? Bill runs the poetry share.
You know, we talk about your talent endlessly. I mean, people, you are talked about. I hope that's okay. But one thing we don't talk about enough is how you have a great talent for a living. And, you know, it's just marvelous. The reason I'm up here is not to just praise her. I could go on and on. But we do have the poetry share every Sunday, and we have done it for years now. It's at Casa de la Noche, 19, Organos number 19, and 3 o'clock till 4:30. And what is really important right now, if you want to catch Lois before she leaves, yes, next fall she'll be back, but you need to come soon.
I'll be here till the end of April.
Oh, well, hey, don't take this away from me, okay? Okay, but anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. Yes.
Question.
Yes.
So, everything everybody's enjoyed, and your voice, your way of reading. So is that natural? Do you practice?
Well, my years in play reader didn't hurt.
Okay.
But what I like most is reading poetry out loud.
That's what it is.
I think it's so different than reading it on page.
I love hearing it.
And Judith Hill is a magnificent presenter of poetry. So she's been my mentor. I never knew anything about poetry till I met Judith. And I can tell you, when Judith was giving a poetry reading at the Literary Sala, which at that point was in the old San Francisco Hotel in the back room, and I heard her present her poem, and I went home to the house that I then had, and there was a flower seller selling flowers in front of my door, and I went in and wrote a poem about it, and I said, if that's the effect she has on me, I better take a class from her. So I did. And then I took workshops every year until she left, and when she's come back.
So, Lois, you had written poetry before then?
Oh, a little bit. In the 1980s, I took a class at the university near me, taught by a poet. And it was, you could write anything. You know, you mean mimeographed? I mean, it was then what we wrote and shared it, but not really. I knew nothing about poetry. So it's an exciting new adventure, and it's helping me sort of navigate these last years of my life, really.
Lois,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
just want to make a comment, not a question, but I was sitting here listening, and you are such a hero, because I think about the hero's journey, and all those things you listen to, all those calls that you had and that you honored, and then to bring them here and share them today, thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Well, yes, Sally.
Yeah, I was really worried, and the reason I suggested a question and answer is because we don't often have in our readings anybody that singularly reads for 60 minutes. And I was concerned that, my God, we're all going to fall asleep.
Well,
I was watching, wait a minute.
you were just checking your phone, was ready to cut it off.
But you took us through, and the way you organized the reading from one to flow, from one thing to the other, and it all kind of hung together, and in your beautiful, dramatic play reader's voice, you did a fabulous job, Lois.
We'll take all your information, but stay and, let's visit. I don't know if they're going to throw us out or what.
Thank you, Lois.